I didn't think I would ever, ever run again. Like for me, like recovery would be just like getting through a normal work day and like, being able to go for a walk with like no symptoms. I think that for me, that was recovered. But now that I'm doing more than that, I'm, actually going out there jogging and, it's really, really fun. Like I found this new appreciation for running. And he's like a lot of people who recover from chronic fatigue, they actually end up being runners, and I was like, oh, that's so funny. And now I've actually planned to do a 10K marathon in October. So I'm super, super pumped for that. So yeah, stay tuned.
How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Anita all the way from Australia. She's been actually a follower of our content for quite a long time. One of our first followers, actually. I remember, Anita, you reached out to me when I first started CFS Recovery, probably a couple months after. And since then, the program has grown and you've grown as well. And you hit a few major milestones in your recovery, which is why we wanted to bring you on here and share your story. But really quickly, you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah. Hey everyone. My name's Anita. I'm 25 years old. I'm based here in Melbourne, Australia. So I got CFS probably about three years ago, 3-ish years ago. And I guess it was kind of like a slow build up to it, but it did kind of hit me overnight. So like in the year leading up to it, I think 2020 when COVID started, um, I think originally, I think I actually had the original Delta COVID virus strain, and that was like at the beginning of, I think it was Feb, but I couldn't really test because there was no test kits available at the time, and I was like really sick for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then I ended up getting like this headache that lasted for like a month. So then I went to go get an MRI scan, and everything was clean. But then after that, like certain things started happening. I started getting really tired, like really fatigued, just like few days in the month and here and there. And then kind of like towards the end of the year is when stuff started getting bad. One day I kind of just woke up and I felt like a train had hit me. And I knew something was wrong. So I went to my doctor, got all the routine blood tests, everything came back normal, as many people have like to have the same experience. But yeah, so then, I started seeing specialists. I think I saw like almost every specialist under the sun that there was. Like I've been to endocrinologists, I've been to infectious disease specialists, I've been to like neurologists, you name it. I've been everywhere. And actually, I missed a step, but before when the fatigue started happening, I did get bitten by like some bug. I think it was a mosquito, and it just didn't go away. It was like there for months, right? And I also had food poisoning by mussels, like seafood mussels, right? So
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know what the real cause was, or like I think that was just what set it off. But the real cause was obviously like me like having nervous system dysregulation for like so many years and just thinking that was normal life.
Hmm.
And so yeah, they tested me for all sorts of viruses. They tested me for glandular fever, which they call mono over there in the US, and they tested me for like Ross River virus, all these mosquito viruses, and still nothing. So then they're like, oh, you have anxiety. I'm like, okay. So they put me on antidepressants, and yeah, like they did help with the anxiety, but it didn't really get rid of the fatigue. So then I
Mm,
started seeking other alternative treatments. I went to like naturopath, I went to a Chinese medicine specialist, and then
yeah.
I
And
saw
at this time, like, what kind of symptoms were you feeling? I'm sure there are probably so many, but what are some of the
yeah.
ones that stand out?
So the symptoms at this point, it was just like really, really heavy fatigue, that sort of like cement feeling. Like it almost felt like I was poisoned. That's how I would describe it. I couldn't like just walking downstairs to the couch felt like a marathon. Everything hurt. Like it felt like there was a weighted blanket on me. It felt like an extra 20 kilos was like pressing me down every day. And then, of course, I was so anxious because I didn't know what was going on. I was having like panic attacks. I was crying nonstop every single day. And I just thought, when is this going to end? And then from there on, I kind of took that whole year off work because I couldn't work. And I thought, look, if I rest for like, what, 6 months to a year, maybe it will go away. And
Mhm.
I didn't just all I did was rest, right? And nothing. It didn't really do anything at that point. So,
And resting is just, like, kinda staying at home, couch bound, kinda just playing it super safe?
yeah, basically. I didn't really go out. I mean, I did get some function back pretty quickly though. So within like 3 months, like I could go out, like I could go to the shopping center, I could go for small walks here and there, stuff like that. But yeah, I was still very symptomatic, very symptomatic. But yeah.
Yeah, so this was 2021 when it all went down?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2021.
Got it. So you're on this kind of goose chase trying to figure out what's going on. You're seeing all these doctors and specialists. You're trying different things. You even took some of the medication, but no one really could tell you what was going on, right? Like they just said it was anxiety. That's pretty
It's
much it.
funny, yeah. It's funny you say that because literally one day I walked into work. This is right before it happened. I walked into work and I just felt so fatigued. Like I just couldn't. I just started crying. And then everyone was like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And then I just explained to them what I was feeling. And you know what? One of my friends actually is like, "Oh, I think it's chronic fatigue." And I'm like, "What's chronic fatigue?" So then I went home and I started Googling and I looked at all these stories and I was like, oh my God, I think that's me. And I became like hysterical because I didn't want to have chronic fatigue because when you look online and you type in
Horrible,
chronic fatigue
terrifying.
syndrome, it is not good. Like when I saw 5% recovery rate, I was like, oh nah, I can't live like this. Nah, I just can't. And then I got so depressed. I went down this like depression hole and they had to like up my medication and yeah, it was just a nightmare. Do not go on Google, guys. So
Do
yeah.
not Google. That's the first thing we tell you guys in the program is do not Google because it's going to be a bad time. And of course, of course you'd be depressed, because you're getting your life kind of taken away from you. But it's like these doctors, they're treating not the root cause. It's like you're depressed because you're unable to do X, Y, Z. So
That's
you're just
right.
going to be more depressed, if this keeps going on. So obviously that didn't work. And then
Mhm.
what'd you do next after that?
I started looking on Instagram and like YouTube, and that's when I came across Raylan's YouTube channel. And then I was like, okay, so there are people who are recovering. And then I sort of got, that glimmer of hope because around that time, lots of people were getting long COVID, which was essentially very similar to ME/CFS. And then I was like, okay, so basically my day consisted of just watching all these recovery videos on YouTube. And then at the end of 2021, I think that's around the time when I came across your channel and your Instagram. And then I think something just clicked in my brain and I was like, okay, this is the nervous system that's responsible for all this. And then in 2022, I kind of just went on with my life. I started working full time, but it was all work from home, right? So, yeah, at that time, I kind of just tried to get on with life and just, ignore it. And it worked for some time, but then I think I had a pretty good year. I was like mild, I was maybe like 70, 60 to 70% functioning. So I could still work, I could still go out, I could travel. I actually went to Bali. But then in 2023, I got vestibular neuritis, which is like inflammation of the ear. And then it was like this crazy vertigo. I was like vomiting so badly. So I went to the hospital and they basically told me, yeah, this is vestibular neuritis. And here, take some steroids. And these steroids were like the highest dose you
Ooh,
could give a patient.
yeah.
And I was on them for about 2 weeks. And when I tell you, when I was on the steroids, I could not sleep. I was maybe doing like 2 hours every night. And once I started weaning off the steroids, I didn't feel any fatigue during that period. It kind of just, it was like masked by this issue. Whenever I have another illness or something going on, the fatigue kind of takes a back seat and like I just forget about it. So when I weaned off those steroids, it hit me like a truck. I was like back to where I was in 2021. And I was like, oh my God. And then that's when I realized, okay, I have to do something about this once and for all and do this the proper way. I can't just recover with like luck. That's just not going to get me anywhere because I'm just going to end up
Mhm.
relapsing. So then that's
Yeah.
when I reached out to you and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready. Like I'm 100% ready to take this on and, start my journey here. So yeah, that's how I got there.
Yeah, yeah. So it was quite the journey, and usually there's a lot of people who watch our content, and it makes sense, it clicks, and they're applying some of the principles, which you were actually applying the principles because we chatted a lot, over time, and you were getting better. It's like you did make your comeback to a certain degree, but then, like a lot of people, you end up kind of relapsing pretty bad. For you,
Mhm.
it was that thing, and then so it wasn't necessarily your fault, but you just happened to slide back. And those steroids they give people, it's pretty intense. I've never heard of it actually working. People give doctors give people hydrocortisone or some other steroid, prednisone,
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm.
it just messes up the nervous system. It's like jump starting a
Yeah,
car that's already jump started. You'll be super
exactly.
wired.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
funny, they asked me, "Do you have any pre-existing medical conditions?" I was like, "Yeah, I have CFS." This is at the ER. And they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And I was like, aren't you supposed to be a doctor?" She thought it was like cystic fibrosis. And I was like,
Oh,
"No."
man, that's not the most reassuring thing when they're like, "What is that?" No,
Yeah.
it should be
I
fine.
was like,
Chronic
"Oh
fatigue
my
syndrome?
god."
So you're tired? Ah, this should be fine. We'll give you this." It's like,
Yeah, I know.
holy cow. So, eventually, you kinda hit a wall, and you realize, "Okay, I need to fix this thing for good," and you just
Yeah.
get over this thing. So,
Mhm.
you ended up booking your application call, and then you came on board, right? And when was that approximately that you came on board again? It was
I think it was like June-ish
yeah,
last year. Yeah, around
yeah,
that
so
time,
about 8
something like that.
8 months ago or so,
Yeah.
right? So less than a year ago. And when you came into the program, when you started, what was your level of functioning at roughly, and what kind of symptoms are you feeling?
Yeah, oh wow. So it was really bad. Like I was probably about 2 to 3,000 steps a day. Like again, it wasn't bedbound, but I was definitely housebound. And what made it worse is when all that started, I got this machine. It's like I don't even know. It's supposed to like clip onto your ear and stimulate
It's
your
for the
vagus
vagus
nerve.
nerve? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Okay, the more is, better." Not and then I was basically doing that for, like, 2 hours a day for, like, maybe 3 days in a row, and they say you should start with, like, 30 seconds. But being my, like, mindset,
All or
like, with
nothing.
my personality, I was like, "Yes, go, go, go." And oh my god, that was, like, the biggest mistake because after that, my whole body was shaking for weeks, and my jaw was shaking, I couldn't sleep, like, it just stimulated my nervous system, like, 100-fold. So, basically, when I came to you, every day I felt this intense nausea, like, it was so bad, I couldn't really eat much. Um, I was basically still working full time, but there I was with my laptop on the floor because, like, I was so sick. All I could do was just lay on the floor. And I don't know how I got through that period. That was like really, really dark. And like my mindset and my emotional state was just in the bin. And yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah. Oh, I remember your application call. You had tears on that call when we were talking
Yeah.
about, what would your ideal future look and feel like. You're like, oh, go to Hawaii, travel, do all this stuff. And then I remember there was some tears, and I was like, you'll get there. Trust me, you'll
Hmm.
get there within a year. By the end of the year, actually, you'll be able to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Because you had already recovered to a certain degree in the past, which means those neural pathways, I knew they were already kind of developed. So I remember you came in, and yeah, you were struggling, but what was it like that first maybe month of implementing all this stuff? What were the biggest changes that you noticed for the first month or two? What was the biggest things that helped?
I think in the first month or two, but because of my personality, I was kind of like resistant to change. I knew that this was the way out, but I just wanted an easy fix. I wanted something that I could just take and it would fix me. I didn't want to, I was in denial that this was going to get me there. And it was just really hard at first because, you're changing all of your behaviors that you've learned over like the last 20 or so years. And
Mhm.
it was like a conscious effort every day to, rewire my thoughts and respond well to the symptoms and all of that. But it turned out to be really, really rewarding. It was definitely hard work. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say, oh, yeah, you just respond well. It does take a lot of effort, it does take a lot of commitment, but, that's part of the journey, right? And the community that we have here in Jumpstart is so supportive. Like literally my first day, everyone was like, welcome to the group. And everyone was so supportive and understanding, and yeah, like we have a really, really good family here, and that's what I was missing. Like I needed that connection with people, and I needed someone to motivate me, seeing everyone's wins in the channels, and just hearing about people's recoveries. I think that was a real turning point for me when I saw that other people like me who've been through a similar experience were actually recovering. And that kind of, I don't know, like flipped a switch in my brain. I'm like, okay, well, this can be me if I do this and this and this.
Yeah, I think it kind of foreshadows what's to come for you, and it just makes it so much easier to stick to the recovery principles because you see that it's working, like, right in
Yeah.
front of your eyes, and
Mhm.
every week you're getting reminders, "Oh, this person, I mean, 3 months ago, this person was wrecked. Now they're doing better." And it makes it so much easier to believe in the whole system,
Yeah.
really, and put
Mhm.
it to work and just kinda course correct every week. Because even on your great weeks, you could be making lots of progress, but then you have that AP, you have that flare up, you may need some reminders, and then sometimes it just takes a few reminders to get back on track. So, for you, what was your biggest kind of breakthrough, would you say? Your first breakthrough? Your first biggest win where you were like, "Wow, this stuff really works. Let me go all in on this. Let me keep going." Do you remember that? Because I know you had a bunch of wins in the wins channel.
I
There were a
did.
few breakthroughs.
Yeah. I don't know if I had one exact breakthrough at the start, but definitely like later on. I had like basically, I think it was around September when I had like multiple events in 1 week. And so we had, like, I'll take you back through it. So one day, my partner, he was having a ball for his university. So then that whole day, I was getting ready and everything, running through appointment to appointment. And then we like literally danced all night at the event. And then I got home at like 2. And then I had to wake up at 5 because we had a flight the next day to Sydney.
Ah, I remember this, yeah. Go
Yeah,
on.
and then, so I got up, went to Sydney and everything, and then it was just, like, really hectic, like, all day we were running around, and then we went to the zoo, then we went to dinner, and we did, like, 17,000 steps, and I was still recovering, I was, like, sick from a virus or something at that time,
Yeah, I
and,
remember that.
yeah, and then basically the next day, again, it was, like, crazy, like, lots of activity, and, then the last day, we had this huge festival. That's the whole reason we went to Sydney, and, it was, like, 60,000 people going. It was, like, crazy. It was, like, a hardstyle event, and, yeah, that night, I got home at, like, 4 at
It
4
was a
AM, and
concert,
then
right? That's what it was?
pardon?
It was a big concert, right?
Yeah, it was like a rave.
Like
Y
a
If you
rave,
have
a straight up rave, which
straight up
is
rave. Yeah, it was
you
like a
pushed
straight
it
up
hard.
concert rave,
I remember that.
and, it's something, like, similar to, EDC in
Yeah,
Vegas.
that's huge.
Basically, what it was. And, yeah, so I got home at, like, 4 or 5 AM. Well, like, that's when I ended up sleeping, and then we had to wake up at 7 AM to go back to Melbourne, and I basically did all of that whole weekend without almost any symptoms, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, this something's, like, going on here, like, something's changing." And then after that, I think that was, like, my one of my breakthrough moments, because then after that, I could go to Hawaii and everything, and yeah, it kinda just started, like, piling on the wins.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember that, and I remember you about a week later, less than a week later after you got back, you were on a call and you were like, "Hey, I'm pretty fatigued. I'm kinda tired. Like, is this normal?" And we're like, "Well, what'd you do?" And you were like, "Well, I did all these steps and I got like 3 hours of sleep, then I did a rave, then I got another 3 hours of sleep, went home." And we were like, I think I would be tired if I did all
Yeah,
that."
yeah, and then I also had, like, 5 vodka Red Bulls. I know Colin's gonna have a heart attack when he hears that, but yeah.
I didn't know that. Holy cow.
Yeah, so it was, yeah, it was pretty intense, but yeah, it just goes to show that the mind work and all this neuroplasticity really works, so
Yeah,
you just gotta
that
keep
is
at it.
very wild.
Mhm.
And that was in September?
That was in September, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty wild considering you were, like, lying down on your floor working on a laptop in, like, May, June-ish. That's
Yeah, that's right, and I was like,
crazy.
that's when I was like, "Whoa, okay, like, I'm getting back on track. This is
Yeah,
awesome."
and usually that's what happens. People they they do this event, or something happens. They do this activity and they go way beyond what they realize they're capable of because they actually feel normal while they're doing the event. And it's not like, oh, let me go for a walk. I feel decent. It's like you go do this event, you feel completely normal. You actually forget you have CFS.
Yeah.
It's like your brain just switches into a different mode. And then I think when people experience that, a lot of times it happens when people travel, or just go into a completely unfamiliar environment. They realize, holy cow, my brain totally switched gears and it wasn't in survival mode. Like I got a glimpse and taste of what normal life is like. And then
Mhm.
when you come back home or you go back to your normal environment, then the symptoms start coming back.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah.
like, what the heck was that? That
Mhm.
it feels like a miracle almost,
Yeah,
but
I know.
it gives
The
you the
beauty of
confidence.
the novel experience is what I like to call it.
Yes, the novel experience. So that happens. That's obviously a crazy breakthrough. After that, right, a few months go by, and I remember you were kind of nervous about Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
Because there were going to be hikes and stuff.
I remember, like, on one of the calls asking you, like, "Oh, do you think, like, I'm ready to go? Like, I don't know if I can do this." And you're like, "Yeah, you can do a hike every day if you wanted to." I didn't do it every day, but yeah,
Yeah,
I ended up hiking, so it was amazing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So for you to make that kind of progress in a few months, just to go to that rave and then a few months later go to Hawaii, what were some of the biggest things that helped you, like the biggest mind shifts, or what are the biggest things that you focused on? So for people watching this right now, they're like, how did she do that? Did she take a magic pill? Like, what did she do? And you did so many things. That's the tricky
Mhm.
part, right? But
Yeah.
what would you say the biggest needle movers, the biggest levers you pulled were?
That's a good question. I reckon, well, the first one would definitely be understanding adjustment periods because before I joined the program, I'd be like, oh, I'd go out and do a big event and then I'd get symptoms. And then when I get the symptoms, I'd be like, oh no, not this again. Like, I'm going backwards. Like, what did I do to deserve this? Like, I shouldn't have done that.
The
But
spiral, right? The downward
yeah, going
spiral.
down that negative spiral. But the way I reframed it was, looking at adjustment periods as something like as a part of growth. It's something you have to go through to get to the finish line. Because if you respond well in those adjustment periods, when it's really tough and when you're in pain and you're fatigued, you're telling your brain, hey, look, there's no real danger here. Pull back appropriately, respond well, think logically, don't think with emotion because emotions is where it gets you. Your brain plays tricks on you. And I think learning how to respond well in the APs was key for me. Like it was honestly the biggest thing because now I could reframe the way I responded. Instead of responding negatively, I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to pull back. It happened because I expanded activity. This is normal. This happens to everybody. And it's just something that you have to go through. It's just part of recovery.
Yeah, and seeing it as an opportunity, like the way to level up, right? And there's no way
That's
to
right.
get to the next level without this necessary thing, right? Just reframing it from something that's
Yeah,
negative to
that's right.
positive.
I mean, yeah, it's still hard. Like sometimes when you get into a thick AP, your mind kind of wants to pull you back into that dark place that you were, but
Mhm.
you just gotta keep responding well. Like that's literally all I did. Um, yeah, I think that was probably the biggest thing I did. And then obviously just listening to other people's recovery stories in the channels, looking at other people's wins and just kind of imagining myself there, a few months down. I think that was something that really helped me as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and speaking of those adjustment periods, I mean, how helpful was it having someone you could turn to as like a safety net? Being able to reach out to the coaches, being able to ask questions on calls, like how did that play a role in helping you navigate through those APs and just keep you on track?
I think that was the biggest thing. Like, shout out to my coach, Krista, because every time I got into an adjustment period, I'd set up a call with her and I'd be like, oh my God, Krista, like, I'm feeling like this again. Like, is this normal? Like, and she'd like make me sane again and, reassure me that, yeah, this is totally normal. Like, this is a good sign. And yeah, she was just like my lifeline when my APs hit. So I really, really appreciate her.
Yeah, and sometimes that's all you need. Is like you need some reminders and some logic. You need to hear some logic because when we get into the APs, super emotional, it's hard to even remember how to respond properly.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
until someone
that's
says
right.
something and it's like a trigger and
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, yeah, that's right. That's how you
Hmm.
respond well." Yeah. So, a few months go on, then Hawaii's coming up, and Hawaii is something you wrote in your vision, right? In one of the early
Yeah.
exercises. Tell us
Hawaii
about
was
that.
like my North Star. Like it was my kind of like ultimate, I don't know what you'd call it, but like
It
it
was
was
like the
just
pinnacle, like, if you got that, like, you'd be happy. That was the
yeah,
ultimate
that
goal,
was
right?
that was my dream goal. And yeah, so like just before Hawaii, I think I ended up in another AP, and that's when I was questioning everything. I was like, "Oh, don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. Like it's a long flight. I think it was about 10 and a half hours from Melbourne to Honolulu." So, but yeah, like it came around, and like I think I was like literally at the tail end of the AP right before like boarding the flight. But when I got there, it was just something like switched. I tell you, Hawaii was so magical. I
It
got
is.
there, and every day we were doing like 15 to 20,000 steps a day. And that was a lot from where I started. Because when I saw you in like June or something, I was on like 2 to 3,000 steps. And now to go to 15 to 20,000 steps every single day was like a huge achievement in itself.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
yeah, I was just living my best life in Hawaii. I was shopping, I was eating, um, I was just going to the beaches every day in the sun for hours. It was so good, like, I couldn't have asked for a better holiday. It was amazing, and on the last day, I hyped myself up to go on the Diamond Head hike,
Mhm.
and honestly, it wasn't that bad, like
It was easy, right? I remember
yeah.
telling you, it's like, "Trust me, Anita, if you could do this rave, you could totally do Diamond Head." I'm
Yeah,
telling
and
you
it
right
was
now.
still hot. Like, it was 30 degrees, like, Celsius over there when I did the hike, and you know what? I think I did it faster than my partner. Like, I think I found it easier than him. So, that just speak volumes to me. I was like, "Okay, wow, that's awesome."
Yeah, and yeah, to go from 2 to 3,000 steps a day, struggling and barely surviving, like, on the floor, just getting by to 15 to 20,000 steps, thriving,
Mhm.
enjoying Hawaii with you barely felt any symptoms there, right? Almost no
So for
symptoms?
the first 7 days, I tell you, kid you not, I felt 0 symptoms, like, the first 7 days, and then I think the last 5 or so days, the symptoms kinda started, but it wasn't, like, huge, it was just, like, little
Yeah.
bouts of fatigue here and there, which is normal because even my partner felt fatigue, like, the hot, humid weather and everything, and walking so much, and it was just yeah, it was
Yeah,
amazing.
that's why I'm so hyped for Hawaii Thriver Retreat. There's something magical about Hawaii because that's where I
Yeah.
had my huge breakthrough, and I realized like, no, 100% it's in the bag. I am recovering. I was like 98% there, like
Mhm.
in terms of mental confidence, but this just sealed the deal when I went hiking there. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting because I was in an AP boarding the plane to go to Hawaii, but when I got off the plane, it's like it just disappeared. It's
Yeah.
weird. Something
Yeah.
magical, maybe the
No.
air. I saw the birds in the airport, and then AP was gone for some reason.
Yeah, it's so
It didn't
weird.
come back. Magical, and the food and the air, the ocean, nature, there's
Oh,
just
so
something
good.
special about it. So I think it's
Yeah.
gonna be super special when we bring all the thrivers out and all do a hike together,
Yeah, that'd be
So,
awesome.
what would you say is different now than a year ago, right? Because you started less than a year ago, but
Yeah.
last March,
Mhm.
what are the biggest differences? And there's so many. Let's start with, in terms of physical. What are the biggest physical differences today and a year ago?
The physical differences now is I definitely respond better to not just symptoms and like APs and everything, but just stress in life. And I think that's that's like the key thing because that's what got me here in the first place. Just bouts and bouts of stress and like for many years just living in that chronic stress sort of state and thinking that that was normal. But now that I have like this newfound appreciation for life, I don't sweat the little things anymore, you know? Like if I'm stuck in traffic, so like so what, you know? It's everything happens for a reason, because if I wasn't stuck in traffic, maybe I'd, end up in a really bad car accident or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
So
I always think of that.
yeah, like you never know. And I think just, yeah, just don't sweat the little things in life. And when stress comes, don't think emotionally, just sit back and think logically. Now I kind of use more of my executive functioning, like the frontal cortex of my brain, as opposed to the amygdala, which is like the more emotional brain. And I
Mhm,
think that's, I'm still working on it. I'm not perfect, right? But I still have, some way to go. But it's definitely improved, like,
mhm.
compared to, like, a year ago, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I found that very similar to mine. It's like I was able to think through situations a lot clearer because I was more logical. I didn't fall into the emotional traps. And I used to be an overthinker.
Yeah,
Like my
same.
mind would spiral and hypothetical conversations. I should have said this. What if I said that? And it would go on for hours, but I didn't have
Mhm,
that after because I knew I'm like, that's what got me sick in the first place. So let's cut
exactly.
that out.
And, like, if something bad happens, you know what? I'm not gonna stress about something that's not in my control. It is what it is, And that's kind of the motto I go with now. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just, nothing is worth me getting stressed over, you know? I'm not gonna
Yeah.
get stressed over work. I can, you're so irreplaceable. They can just replace you tomorrow. If you die, they're not really gonna care, right? So don't stress about things like work and, just the small things. You just, yeah.
Yeah, don't sweat the small stuff. And, I actually stopped putting labels on things and situations as well. Like, I didn't look at things as good or bad. I just saw them as neutral. We assign a label to it usually, just like the perfect example sitting in traffic. One person is going to be stressed out, kind of gripping the steering wheel, blood pressure high, heart rate up, breathing heavy, right? And there could be a car, one car over, and the guy's just sitting there enjoying the sun rays on his skin. Even though he's
Yeah,
late for an appointment, what is he going to do? Fly over everybody else? Can't do
exactly.
anything. So might as well enjoy it, put on the good music. So you could put two people in the same situation and one person will respond a lot better than another person. So if we put two Anitas side by side, the old Anita and the 2.0 version of Anita, like today, it's just two very different um, experiences of life, which is the cool part about all of this stuff and seeing CFS. So, do you also look at CFS differently? Because I'm sure at one point you probably hated this thing and you know you felt like it was a curse. Are you able to see it differently now and how it was a gift?
Yeah, I do. I do. I think that me getting CFS in the first place, now looking back in hindsight, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise. And I know a lot of people will say this when they kind of get on the other side or towards, the end of the tunnel. You kind of look at things differently, because I'm really grateful that I actually got this, because I wouldn't have learned all this information that I have. And I think not many people know this stuff. Stress kills, I had this one doctor tell me, if you want to die young, get stressed. And that, just now looking back, it just hit me. I'm like, yeah, that's not the life I want to live. I want to enjoy my life and not just live on edge and full of adrenaline every single day. So, yes, I'm very, very grateful that I got CFS. Sounds stupid, but um, yeah, I just wouldn't have learnt all this stuff. I wouldn't have become this new, improved version of myself.
And you wouldn't be as grateful for the things you have now and the life you have now.
Exactly.
Like everything is it's like you're doing everything for the first time again, like being able to eat whatever you want, being able to hang out with friends again, being able to go to the mall and not worry about like, is it too loud? Are the lights too bright? Should I go home after 5 minutes? Like it's just that's no way to live,
Mm-mm.
And I see it as it's kind of like you're driving a car and it breaks down and you got to revamp the whole thing and it's a hassle at the time. It sucks. It's crappy. But then when you fix the car, you realize and you step out, that car was heading off a cliff anyways. So it's
Mhm.
actually a good thing it broke down. Just like you
Exactly.
said, I think if I didn't get this and I kept on going, something worse would have happened. I probably
Mhm.
wish I would have
Yeah,
pushed myself to way worse things.
and I don't even wanna find out what that
Yeah.
worse is. So,
It would
yeah.
definitely wouldn't have been good. Like CFS
Nah.
was the easy route. Let's put it that
Oh,
way.
yeah.
It was
It's like my
as hard as
savior.
it was, that was the easy option for your
And
body.
exactly, and I feel like if you can go through this in life, you can go through anything, because I think this is one of the hardest things, I'll ever do in my life, and getting out of this is probably gonna be one of my proudest accomplishments in
Oh, yeah.
my whole life. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, with all this new capacity, let us know what are some exciting things that are coming up. I know you're jogging every day, right?
Yeah, so
Tell us about that.
I just started jogging for, like, the first time in like, over what, 4 or 5 years? And, yeah, I've been jogging for about I do a power walk for 10 minutes, then I jog for 10 minutes, and then I do a cool down for 10 minutes. And
Okay.
I stay at that level for, like, 3 weeks, and then the level is, like, you add an extra 5 minutes or something like that. And, I've just done my first round of the 3 weeks, and, like, when I started running, I was like it was just magical. Like, I didn't think I would ever run again. Like, for me, like, recovery would be just, like, getting through a normal work day and, like, being able to go for a walk with, like, no symptoms. I think that for me, that was recovered. But now that I'm doing more than that, I'm, actually going out there jogging and, it's really, really fun. Like, I found this new appreciation for running. And, he's like, a lot of people who recover from chronic fatigue, they actually end up being runners. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. And now I've actually planned to do a 10K marathon in October. So I'm super, super pumped for that. So yeah, stay tuned.
That is epic. That's one of the goals I set actually, but I just never got around to doing the running. I was working out like crazy though, put on lots of
Yeah.
muscle, but I don't know, cardio just it bores me. I can run for about 15 minutes, then I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
bored, let me go lift some weights. But it is a huge milestone to be able to do something like Tough Mudder or, a marathon, something like that. Cause that's like putting the stake in the ground. Even normal
Yeah.
people struggle to do that. So if you can
Mhm.
do that, you've definitely surpassed even the average person as
Oh,
someone who
yeah.
recovered from this.
Yeah, I think it would be a real, real pivotal moment for me, just like running through around Melbourne and then like, doing that final lap in the MCG with everyone cheering you on. I think that's just like a huge emotional moment. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to that. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you've been through a lot in the last few years, but you made it to the other side and you're still on your journey. You're towards the end of the tunnel here and you've already created this 2.0 version of yourself. What would you say to somebody who is where you were a year ago or 2 years ago when they're in the trenches, they're trying to figure out what's going on and sometimes they're questioning if they can even recover. Like they have the
mhm,
fire inside, but they've come across all these forums and all these Facebook groups of just negativity and they see the dark side. What kind of
mhm.
things would you tell them for inspiration and, to give them hope?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, when I was in the trenches, I kind of disconnected myself from those negative groups. You'll see a lot of like internet trolls and like saying, "Oh, this brain rewiring stuff, it's not gonna cure you." They just went into like remission and like it's all a scam, and And when I was most vulnerable, I kind of believed it because you don't know what to believe. But then
Yeah.
the more and more videos I saw of people recovering, not just on your YouTube channel but on Raylan's YouTube channel, it's like it can't be a scam. There's something to it. And yeah, so I kind of just went for it. I was like, you know what, I haven't really got much to lose because you know I've just got to try everything. And yeah, when I tried it, I started seeing results and I'm like, okay, this is the real deal. But yeah, you just, when you're like really, really deep in the trenches, I think look for as much positivity as you can. Look for all the people who have recovered. There's so many people on Instagram who have like their stories and their journeys. And that's actually one of the reasons I ended up joining because I saw people who had recovered through your program. And watched their videos like over and over. I think I've watched like one video like at least 20 times until it was like ingrained into my brain. And that
Do you
was
remember who
Nicole's
it was?
story.
Nicole, I was gonna
Yeah,
say Nicole because she's from your city too, right?
Melbourne. And she just resonated with me because, it's like, I don't know, I felt like she was really authentic and I loved her story and I still follow her on Instagram and I would love to see like, what she's up to and how she's doing. And yeah, she's fully recovered and I'm like almost there as well. I'm probably about like 80-85% of the way. And yeah, so I think really it's just watching all of those recovery stories and, just basically believing. You got to believe, and you got to give it a chance. You can't just say, oh, this is like a scam, this is not going to work. You got to actually try it for yourself. Like, just don't listen to those internet trolls, because half of them are like miserable, and like, because I don't even know,
Yeah,
they're
they're not
jealous
even
when they
recovered.
see, yeah, they're jealous when they see other people who have recovered, and then they just want to shut down their progress and say, oh no, you probably didn't even have chronic fatigue to begin with, or like, nah, you just went into remission. And I mean, you recovered through the principles of your psychiatrist, right? In the
Mhm.
hospital. So there is science behind it. It's not just like something you made up on the internet.
Yeah, yeah, and there is a lot of science. We even have Krista because she has her double masters in physiotherapy, so she loves the sciencey side of things and reading articles. I could never do that, but she's compiled a whole vault of articles supporting everything we do.
Yeah.
So the science is there, but we just don't
Yeah.
really share it with people
I
because
know.
they get so confused. I would get
Mhm.
confused. It's like, I'm just like, tell me what I need to do. Tell me what's going on in the simplest way possible, and I'll do it. So we try to simplify everything, but you're right. Some people like they're just not ready to hear this
Yeah, they're not
information.
ready for it. And that's okay, because I was there too. I was
Yeah.
at a place where I thought, this could be the way out, but I'm not 100% sure. And I kind of just waited for the right moment where I was ready to fully commit. You have to be committed to the stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, when I was, in the right headspace and everything, that's when I joined, and everything just kind of started falling into place. So,
Yeah.
but before that, I did other programs as well. And I think the reason why your program resonated with me is because you simplified it in a way where it was really easy to understand. Because you got to remember, lots of these people who have CFS deal with like debilitating brain fog and headaches. They can't look at screens for long. So the way you displayed the content made it really easy to kind of understand and take it all in. Whereas the other programs I did, it was like really full on, and they kind of got you to do all these exercises and like with your hands and stuff, and it just wasn't working for me. I didn't resonate with it. And I think you got to really resonate with the person and the content to actually like fully commit to them.
Yeah, totally. And we have a lot of people who come over and, work with us after going through other programs. And one of the main things I wanted to do from the start is make it as simple as possible. Cause that's one thing I totally understand. I've been in that position before where I can't even look at a screen. I have memory loss. I can remember things for maybe 1 minute, brain fog.
Mhm.
So we really try to simplify everything. A lot of other resources. It's kind of like going through a university lecture course, hour-long videos, 30-minute videos. It's just too much for people. So,
Yeah,
you know, I think that's so important. It's finding something that resonates with you, something that you can get behind, something that makes sense, that actually makes logical sense to you. And not everybody is a fit for every program. Like you'll find the one that matches. And that's why we put
exactly.
out so much content. Like you were watching our content for what is it, over a year or something, right?
Yeah,
Before you
that's
started
right.
with us.
Yeah,
Well over a year. To implement the things. And when it was time, when you hit that wall and you were like, okay, it's time. And you'll know for you guys watching this right now, you'll know when it's time to hit that button and join. It may be tomorrow, it may be another 6 months from now, but you'll
exactly.
know just like
Hmm.
you knew.
Yeah.
And then you went into it full force. That's why you got such great results. You went all in. Um, and there was some resistance at first, but as you start seeing the wins in the community, that's something that leads you to going from 3,000 steps a day surviving to being able to go to a rave. Like, what
Yeah.
is that? July, August, September, 3 months later.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
6 months later,
Yeah.
hiking in Hawaii. So
Mhm.
it's cool to watch your journey unfold. And you're so young too. You got a whole life ahead of you. And it's actually, I tell especially younger people, it's good you're learning these lessons now because better to go through this now than when you have a family of like
Yeah.
maybe multiple people, right? Better to get this out of the way sooner because the people who get CFS, you're bound to get it, right? If you didn't get it
Exactly.
now, you would have got it down the road at some point with the
Mhm.
way your nervous system is wired. So
Yep.
you got this out of the way sooner than later.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah.
yeah. So, is there anything else you want to share with people watching this right now? Is anything else you would want to tell yourself a year ago? that you would want to hear?
Yeah, so probably I think the main thing is just know that recovery is possible and there's so much hope out there. Just don't give up because honestly, at times I thought about giving up and just, yeah, I was in a really dark place. And here I am now on the other side of the tunnel. And it does get better. Like, of course, you're going to have some resistance at the start because we're human, when that's normal. We're not robots. And I think just surround yourself with as much positivity as you can, whether that be, watching the YouTube channels, watching recovery stories, finding all sorts of recovery hope on Instagram or wherever it may be. But just believe that you will get better. You will recover because I was there in your place a year ago and things change. They do. So don't give up. Don't give up on
Yeah.
hope.
Don't ever give up. And 12 months from now, anybody watching this, like your life could be so different. A year ago, Anita, you were in the trenches of this stuff. You didn't
Mhm.
think you could even jog um,
Mm,
at one point or ever run again. And now you're not just thinking about doing a marathon, you're like training for it,
mhm.
building up to it. And that's just a
And
year difference.
exactly. Like, I literally thought I had to give up my job a year ago because I was on the floor. I was barely, like, awake at the screen. Like, and now it's totally different. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
think
the
hope is the closest thing to magic that we have here. So, don't lose
absolutely.
that hope.
Don't ever lose that hope. And if I can do it, if Anita can do it, and if so many other people in the program can do it, and I'm talking about dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of people. That's not even including all the people who recover in Facebook groups or who never even joined the program. Like it's
Exactly.
people recovering with just the content.
Mhm.
If they can do it, I don't think it's a coincidence.
I think, yeah.
It's
Yeah, you can recover just through the content, but I think for me, I needed that reassurance and I needed that extra support. So that's kind of why I joined the program because I just needed that, little bit of
yeah,
more support. But yeah,
exactly. That the more hands-on help, right? That
yeah,
um, more specific direction. And you had tried doing it on your own,
hmm,
but it only got you to a certain place, right? So
yeah,
for you guys watching this right now, I hope you take Anita's story as huge inspiration for what's possible. This is just another one of the many examples of why you can recover. This is another story of so many people who are getting their lives back. And Anita, this is like the perfect definition of going from surviving to thriving, right? A year
yeah,
ago, it's surviving. Now we're running every day, training for a marathon. And I can't wait because we'll do a second video too after
yeah.
you
When
do that
you're fully
marathon.
recovered, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
that's gonna be absolutely epic. I could already picture it. You at the finish line, raising your hands, right? All fit. You got a medal or some ribbon or something, and then that would be an epic
Hmm.
picture.
Yeah,
So
I'm really
it's
excited.
just so cool to see, and you put in the hard work, and you deserve it. You deserve it, and everything that's to come. So everybody watching this right now, if you resonated with Anita's story, if this inspired you, leave a comment down below. What was your biggest takeaway or biggest mind shift from this? Or what can you resonate with? Something that Anita said or something that she went through that you can relate to, comment down below. And if you did need some extra help, if you wanted some extra support, if you've been watching the videos for a while and you say, hey, I want to take this a step further, you can click the link down below and apply for the program. We have different resources for people, and we would love to help you if you're the right fit, help you go from surviving to thriving and kind of walk you through the recovery process, just like how we did with Anita and so many others. So click the link down below. Always remember, guys, just as Anita said, don't give up hope. Don't ever give up hope. You can always turn things around. Always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. We'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you enjoyed this one. And thank you so much, Anita. I can't wait to do your recovery update interview after you run that marathon.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Cheers.